Hey everybody! How's it going out there? How's it going this week? Well, convention season starts early and starts basically when the year begins these days. And guess what? We have results from one of the top eights already, on the top eight attended furry conventions in the world already. And from further confusion in San Jose, California. And it's back, baby. You thought it was stagnating, didn't you? You thought that the attendance was stagnating and that it was down for the count, didn't you? But it's back. It's showing a healthy signs of growth once again. So they released their numbers, thankfully, and they said that they had 742 fursuits. Yeah, 400 fursuits, 3,000 plus visitors to the night market, and 4,509 attendees. Now, for 4,509 attendees, it's starting to show that there is actually a growth again. As far as what this night market is, it's also an interesting thing for this particular convention, and that is the San Jose convention decided to implement a sort of new gathering or new idea for a sort of gathering space that is 18 plus, and basically they coordinated and made a sort of a market, sort of a combination of a market and a DJ sort of clubbish area, which is for 18 plus, where people could, act and behave in a more adult fashion and also sell adult products. Apparently, is very popular. Now, when they say visits, they mean number of people going behind the curtain, as it were. So it's not necessarily so if someone went out left and then came back, that counted towards the tally. So like the numbers are not like a 1-to-1 thing like the attendance. But it seems like they said that that was very successful, and they plan on bringing it back in future years. It sounds like to sort of like give the adult furries a place to enjoy anthropomorphism in a more adult fashion. Won't be for every convention, but I think that some people at some conventions, at some multi-age conventions, and more like general audiences, might look toward that particular style of things. It's not a new thing for conventions to try to block off or coordinate a 18 plus segment of the space. Um, there's an adult dealer's den, I think, in Midwest Fur Fest. Adult art shows and things like that. Whereas, like, some conventions completely shy away from it in our general audience in basically all areas. So there's different styles of conventions and different things. Clearly, they have moved in the direction of saying that we have spaces for those who desire such spaces, and we have also general audience content for the rest of the convention. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on as conventions learn and grow and figure out new ways to implement new systems. Um, so, with that, we're going to bring back our old friend chart here. So we are moving into 2020. The dotted line, and why I say that San Jose is back, baby, is because over the past few years, from like 2014 to 2018, further confusion basically stagnated pretty hard. It didn't grow by more than a few dozen people a year, if it grew at all, and sometimes it would lose a few. So basically, its growth was basically flatlined and zeroed for a few years. And in that duration, a lot of things have changed. It used to be the second most populous furry convention in the world back in 2009. So you can see back here in 2009, it was pretty close to Anthrocon. Anthrocon, it was a few thousand away from Anthrocon. Anthrocon hadn't reached 5,000 attendees yet, and they were just at around 2,500. So they were only like maybe a 1,000 and a half behind Anthrocon. And Midwest Fur Fest was actually in third place at that time and had less attendees than Further Confusion. As Midwest Fur Fest started to take off at around that time, further confusion started to stagnate. And further confusion and Midwest Fur Fest are actually a month apart from each other. And theoretically, why this growth might be occurring is because of what you could see up at the very top. Midwest Fur Fest had a big explosive growth rate at a particular time, almost to the point of exponential, which was kind of scary, right? But it eventually overtook Anthrocon as the largest furry convention in the world at in 2017, which I did a full-on article on, which can be seen in the description below. Um, and the fact that I had those numbers, I could actually publish it on the night that they announced it, and just left a blank space for how many attendees they were going to announce, because it was almost surefire at that point, because the numbers in 2016 basically showed that it was almost guaranteed that um, that they were going to overtake them at that point. And so I could literally like commission an art piece in anticipation for it. Like I literally, it's one of the few stories that I could literally pre-plan for. That's why putting numbers in charts in an Excel sheet is useful, kids, because you can predict things that a lot of people don't even care about. You can predict things that people really genuinely care about. I'm making fun of myself. Anyways, so as you can see, though, like as Midwest Fur Fest was growing really fast, further confusion sort of stagnated in growth. And during that time of stagnation, a lot of furry conventions started to started to grow and grow past further confusion. We have Biggest Little Fur Con, which showed surprising growth from its premiere year onwards. And its premiere year was only 2013, and it's already the third largest furry convention in the world. We have Furry Week in Atlanta, and we have, I think that one's Megaplex is the one, or no, that's Furry Fiesta. Sorry, the dark green is Furry Fiesta. So we have Furry Fiesta, and then it looks like Megaplex might have more attendees than FurCon this year, despite the return of growth to FurCon. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But at the end of the day, fur confusion is not out of the horse race yet, or not out of the woods yet. They're not out of the woods, but they're back. They're growing again. They're starting to show signs of growth and recovery, which is great. And I think one of the big reasons, as you can see with Midwest Fur Fest, there's a really, really, really harsh tapering off, because that flat line there between 2018 and 2019 is actual numbers. They declared that there was about 11,010 or so attendees, 11,016. Whereas the year before it was like their final numbers was like 10,900 and something. So like the difference between those two things are pretty eye catching. The taper off and the sudden stagnation of growth for Midwest Fur Fest is quite a big thing. And a lot of people might ask why. And like the thing that I would say is the biggest problem here is that room lottery. I think I think it was actually kind of two things. That in 2018 there were so many people and the lines were so long, and it was a 2.5 hour line con. I think a lot of furries were like, it's like I don't want to wait in line. Like furries don't like trend, like they're not big on waiting, I guess. We're not really patient type. So we're like, like maybe there's other conventions around the world we can go to. We don't really need to wait in line 2.5 hours to see our friends. We can see them online whenever we want. We can interact with them online. To stand in line for like 3 hours to do this kind of thing, maybe not our bag of tea. I think that was one factor. The line did improve this year, but the second thing, which is that room lottery, I think was the biggest deterrent to growth for Midwest Fur Fest this year. Mostly because of miscommunication and misunderstanding as to like how the room lottery was supposed to work and how it it's like and how it functioned, and like a lot of furries, as soon as they lost the room lottery, they just basically gave up, or like they just like as soon as they got the room they didn't want, they just like I'm not gonna deal with it. So I think that um, I don't think the room lottery is necessarily a terrible idea. It just needs to be implemented better in order to make sure that there aren't this wind knocked out of people's sails, um, that they give up on Midwest Fur Fest simply because they lost the room lottery kind of a thing. Um, there's probably better systems that could be implemented, and I will leave that to their logistics department, because you know that's their function. Um, or they can be happy with stagnant growth. I don't know. Like maybe they're fine with keeping it around 11,000 people a year. But I think as they try to expand, I think they're going to want, like, as they're expanding their presence in the convention center, and that I think that they would want more people coming in to supply revenue in order to accommodate for the growing accommodations that are going on. But that being said, so the big story here about the FurCon here is that it's growing, and that we have the night market, which is a sort of new idea that has been thrown out there and seems to be quite successful. Um, but there was also another news story that came out of this event, and that's the one that the mainstream news is talking about, and that's this guy. So during a night in the streets of San Jose near the convention, apparently a lady was who was acting as a Lyft driver, got into a conflict with one of her customers, which ended up being her boyfriend. And so like there was some domestic disturbance that was going on, and like the lady in the vehicle was being wailed on by her boyfriend, and like she's cried out for help, and her screams were heard by like furries on the street, and the furries pulled the guy out of the vehicle as she drove away, and she got away after they had restrained the guy. Um, so that whole situation happened. There was a recording on it, and there will be a link in the description below to the Mercury Sun, I believe it's called. Yeah, I think so. No, the Mercury News from San Jose. There's a whole description as to what happened, witness testimonies, and all those kind of things. So you can read that whole thing. I won't go over too much details because I think the Mercury thing goes over it quite well. Um, there was a video recording of the incident, and you can watch that there as well. Nothing too violent or too disturbing. Obviously, situations like that can be disturbing for some people, but like compared to some other videos that are released of worldly um, conflict such as that, not too much blood, not too much gore, just mostly like individuals restraining other individuals. Um, there was one thing about the video that sort of kind of was like to me, and I have to sort of throw a sort of criticism out there. And that was like one guy stood in front of the camera while it was recording. Um, luckily, I'm going to say this, luckily nothing escalated too hard about this, and that everyone sort of walked away from the situation. Um, and that like even though the situation was pretty intense, or it could be pretty intense, it did de-escalate, right? Very easily can situations like that get out of hand and escalate into a particularly even worse situation. And thankfully everyone walked away, and everyone, there was no major issues other than the trauma that happened between to the lady from his boyfriend there, or from her boyfriend. I'm assuming ex-boyfriend at this point, but who knows. Um, the but I get but it just kind of bleeds into a different topic, which is how people view people who record incidences such as this. Um, in my opinion, obviously, as somebody who likes to present things from the ground and likes good information, I relatively see individuals who record incidences that occur, such as this, in a positive way. I see it as not being of much harm, and of being a service, actually, when somebody sees an unusual situation going on and chooses to record that unusual situation, that they can help, um, protect all the parties involved in that particular situation. And unfortunately, a lot of people see people who record situations like that as somewhat vulturish. I don't see it in that way in cases where if they're looking for trouble, if they're looking for things to record, then that's vulturish. But if they happen to be walking down the street and some incident like this happens, and they take out the recording devices, to me that's not vulturish. And I won't judge too hard on the person who blocked the camera, because it sounded like the person who blocked the camera was maybe knew the guy who was recording, and he just wanted to, like, dude, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Can we just go eat? Like, some people deal with conflict in different ways, and in the heat of that moment, people can make decisions such as that. But to me, standing in front of the camera is a detriment to what they're doing. Um, it's like, because people can, you're worried about people passing judgment, right? It's like, oh, you're recording this situation. Oh, you're just like, you're a vulture who's like not helping the situation. You're just using it for your clicks or whatever. And people like assume that kind of thing. They assume that somebody like this is like a TMZ, who are like, haha, TMZ, we're the first ones to tell you that Kobe Bryant died. We're proud of it. It's like, okay, great. You're proud that Kobe Bryant died. No, that's not what we said. We didn't say that we're proud that Kobe Bryant died. We were the first ones to tell you that Kobe Bryant died. It's like, who cares? Kobe Bryant died, man. We would have found out if it wasn't, if TMZ didn't exist in the world. We would have eventually found out that Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash, okay? Okay, calm down, TMZ. Calm down. The world doesn't revolve around you. Just because you were the first one to tell us that Kobe Bryant died, and you're very proud of that fact, doesn't mean that the world would be so stupid and unintelligent that we would have never found out that Kobe Bryant died. Okay, okay. But sure, hold that badge of honor. Yeah, you're the first ones to tell us Kobe Bryant died. Congratulations. Somebody else would have done it if you didn't exist. But guess what wouldn't have happened if Kobe Bryant didn't exist? We wouldn't have had good basketball, son. Yeah. Sheesh. See, that's the kind of press that people get ticked off about. It's not like the person who was recording this incident in this situation was looking for trouble. They happened to find it, and they happened to want to try to do their part to make sure that all the parties involved were protected. And yes, that includes the jerk who beat his girlfriend, right? Because they're being restrained by furries, right? We want to make sure that the people restraining that individual are not harming that individual, or don't escalate the situation further than they have to. And luckily, in this case, the situation came to a resolution that was favorable. Everybody walked away. Nobody died. Nobody took serious traumatic injuries, from my understanding, from what I could read. So, but having somebody record it helps protect everybody involved in that situation. And stepping in front of the camera in that case can do irreparable harm to evidence, in case people, in case that evidence is needed. What if the person who was restrained got excessively harmed? Or vice versa. What if the person who was being restrained or being restricted had a weapon on them and pulled it out? And you blocked the camera while while the situation escalated, and obstructed evidence that could be used against the individual who escalated the situation, right? You need to understand that the people who are recording these situations should be unobstructed, especially if they have good faith on what they're doing. There's a difference between that and ambulance chasing. And the fact that our society doesn't understand what the difference between those two situations are can lead to a problematic situation. Because here's the thing: And here's the thing that you have to understand. If, let's say that this was not furries in this situation dealing with this individual, let's say it was police officer. Let's say a police officer, while they were restraining this man was black, this black man, and they were restraining this black man, and one of the cops steps in front of the camera and obstructs the camera view, you know, what would the furries' internet reaction be? You could tell me what the reaction would be. It's like, oh, look at that. Fuzz covered for fuzz. The fuzz is covering for the fuzz. Those fuzz always cover for the fuzz, man. So what's the difference between when the fuzz is a slang for a police officer or the fuzz is this? Is there a difference or should there be a difference? Because here's the thing, if you step in front of the camera to protect other furries because they're the ones being restraining an individual to de-escalate a situation, then why should we not be bound by the same criticisms of obscuring evidence or obscuring a situation than if a police officer did, right? That's the standards have to be met. When you place a rule set onto the world, everybody should have to abide by that rule set, no matter if they have a badge or if they have a furry costume or if they're just a normal person on the street. So to me, that's sort of my rude ramble about that whole situation. That's the one thing in the whole situation that kind of was like, let me put another caveat here. I don't hold any animosity to the person who, like, any full animosity to the person who instinctively stood in front of the camera, especially in this case where nothing bad happened. But my concern is, like, if something bad does happen in those kind of situations, obscuring the camera can be detrimental to the parties involved. And we should be looking at people who use their recording devices, because here's the thing. Every one of us has a recording device these days. And every one of us has the power of social media. Like, literally, like in the 1960s, the only kind of people who had this power were the government. And everyone else had, like, only, like, they didn't have this kind of power. We have a lot of power, and we have a lot of responsibility to go with that power. But we should always understand, like, we should understand, like, why do we see somebody recording a situation like this as a negative thing and as something that needs to be blocked? And understand why we think of that in that way in society and try to shift our beliefs or ideals as to whether a situation warrants recording or not, and who is responsible for recording. One person, one people. I think the biggest thing is, like, people can see that as like a hindrance or being vulture-y or something, and it's like, oh, look, you're just observing the situation and not helping anything, right? And it's like, oh, you're just taking advantage of the situation to get yourself a video for it. And I think that sort of belief leads to the kind of behavior where someone would be more inclined to block a video like that by standing in front of the camera. But at the same time, you do have to worry about, you do have to consider that, that situation was already escalating. The person with the camera probably didn't have all the information. All they could see was that something was wrong and that there was some conflict going on and that they had to record, and they had felt compelled to record it because the situation was seemingly going to escalate. And they wanted evidence in case the furries or the individual who is being restrained needed that evidence in the future. And he doesn't know the story about what's going on, but he knows that in order to help people, recording this conflict that's going on can be of help, right? He's trying to help in the situation, in my opinion. And we shouldn't be looked down upon people who are trying to help. He said, well, if he wanted to help, why didn't he get involved in the fisticuffs? And it's like, well, there was already people there, right? If you have too many people trying to restrain an individual and dogpile on them, then the effectiveness of each individual person goes down, right? It's sort of too many cooks in the kitchen spoil the soup. If you have too many people trying to wrangle and de-escalate a situation, the person getting involved later on might escalate it accidentally and not know what they're doing. So their recording is probably more useful than them stepping in physically into the situation. So we need to understand that as a society, I think, in that, yeah, we all have cameras now, and yes, we can all run into a random situation where there is some sort of kerfluffle going on, or some unusual circumstances going on that we feel like that we need to record as far as evidence goes. And we shouldn't look down upon people who do that in these unusual circumstances. They're not TMZ, right? They're not people who are exploiting terrible situations and putting pride in the fact that, hey, they were the first to see this terrible situation, right? Like, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know who the person's name is who recorded that video, but I do know who was the first one to report that Kobe Bryant died, right? That's the difference. If you brag about being the one to tell people about a terrible situation, saying, look, I was there to tell you about that terrible situation, ain't I the greatest? Like, that's horrible. But if somebody is doing it because they know that it needs to be done, then we shouldn't look down upon them. And that's my ramble about that situation. Anyways, what are your thoughts on the situation? Kick a comment in the comment section if how you feel about people recording incidences such as this, and your feelings about like those kind of situations in general. And that was covered by CNN too. Like every news thing covered this like domestic situation. I decided to put it at the end. I wanted to cover like the convention numbers and things like that first. They also raised a lot of charity for the Bay Area's GLBT community, which is like a human charity. What is that? Right? Not an animal shelter, not ALS, but like GLBT community. I think that was very well received as well. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with the furry convention other than this incident. But obviously, it's the thing that the mainstream's talking about, so I've got to talk about it. So I'm just like, oh, I got to talk about it. Sure, okay. I said my piece. But thank you very much for watching. If you like this kind of content, kick that subscribe button and kick the bell so the ding-a-ling will tell you when I do my thing. Wow, I like that statement. I'm going to keep that one. Anyways, kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section, and I will see you guys next week for another review. Thank you very much for watching.